Hi, everyone. It's Brodie Wise from ITS in Baltimore, Maryland. I am the Executive Vice President at Internet Testing Systems. This is another round of Tales of Testing. With me today, I have Huvie Winchell from our test production team. Huvie is the Exam Design and Accessibility Lead. Huvie, welcome. Can you introduce yourself?
Sure. So, hi everyone. I work on the test production team at ITS, and I help lead a super talented group of scripters who create all of our user interfaces. And I also help manage accessibility projects.
Great. Thanks, Huvie. Well, one of the things about Huvie that I'm pretty proud of, Huvie joined me at ATP and she led a discussion on accessibility. Well, Huvie, what'd you think about joining a session and doing one of your first sessions at ATP?
So, I've definitely never presented at such a forum before, but I have to say I did enjoy it. And, it felt really good being able to share knowledge and just share how important accessibility is.
That's great. I know one of the things I think everybody should do, get out of your comfort zone, do a little bit more, share your knowledge. And one of the things why I encouraged Huvie to go and do this presentation at ATP is when you think of accessibility, it's beyond a legal discussion. So Huvie, so the question for you is, why is it important to you? Why should other companies focus on this?
So accessibility is important because, when you work in the testing industry, you have to realize what passing an exam could do for someone. How well someone does can really help shape a person's future and their career. And as web developers, designers, and authors, it's really important to realize what a bad, inaccessible, improper design can do and how it can really hinder candidates and students and just people's ability to take their growth and success to the next level. And personally, I don't want to be that roadblock.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Who wants to be the roadblock? And I like how we have to do our part. And I like you make this a personal thing. But you know what's really hard is these organizations are trying to convert from where they are, where they're going, and there's a lot to think about. And but when you are making a program more accessible, like what do you have to focus on? What are the key points?
So I think there's really two main things to think about. I think the first thing is the user, and the second thing is the code. So the first thing, you the users are the most important thing ever when you talk about accessibility. The end user, know who's taking your test, and really, to take accessibility to the next level and to take your exam design and exam experience to the next level, the best way to do that, Brodie, is with real user testing. Before you put your test out in the field, get a sampling of real users to help test your product. And even once your product is in the field, have surveys as part of your tests and say, how well did we do? How was the exam design? How was the overall exam experience? Did you find the exam to be accessible? And you really have to put yourself in the user's shoes in order to create a truly accessible and successful product. And I think the second thing to keep in mind is really on a more technical level is, the code of your exam and the code of your web page has to be perfect. When you're talking about a web page that has to work across, several different browsers and platforms and all these assistive technologies out there, like, your code has to be concise, your code has to be perfect. There's really not a lot of room for creative code solutions because you really want all users to get a consistent, good experience, and the best way to do that is with clean code. So those, I think, are my two. I'm sure I could talk about this all day, but those are my two main, asks of, companies who, want to become more accessible.
No, that's great, Hoovie. What about just a minor thing, but helping someone who's new to this get started from a technical standpoint? Because you've actually coached some of our team members and our web team and engaged into things like what is that? Should it just go to an industry thing or just go to some of the standard web standards?
So, you know, looking at the web standards and WCAG guidelines, getting familiar with them is super important, and that's definitely a very crucial part of the process. Get to know the standards, get to know the code that belongs to those standards, and that's really the first step. I guess what I was focusing more on, really what the discussion at ATP was, is taking accessibility to the next level. So that's like going beyond the guidelines to get your accessible product to be even better. So
That I love that, Hoovie. I love it because there's a baseline. You start there. You got to just push past it and know that the baseline isn't good enough and keep pushing beyond and working with our partners and so on. And I thought it was a great discussion, and I think people should go back and watch that. So we're pretty much out of time, but our listeners love advice, and can you leave them with something, a little tidbit, a little Hoovie knowledge?
So I think I'd like to leave everyone with the thought that accessibility, first off, it's hard, so don't be afraid to just start somewhere and then incrementally make updates. Like, don't let accessibility just haunt you and then you never get started. And I think, right along with that is the thought that accessibility is a journey and not a destination. Accessibility projects don't have a start and an end date. When you push an accessible product to production, you're not finished. You know, industry changes are the industry is constantly changing. Web guidelines constantly changing, browsers are changing, assistive technology is constantly coming out with updates, and you really have to keep reassessing your product in order to make sure that your candidates are getting the best experience possible.
Excellent, excellent. Well, thank you, Hoovie. Thank you so much. Great discussion. I appreciate it. And thanks for making the time to meet with us all. Have a good
Thanks for
day.
having me.
Bye.
Bye.